Hello, everybody. So this is completely impromptu. Me and my beautiful love right here. We decided that today is marked as the 11th, the day of the 11-year mark of Joe Rogan's podcast when it started streaming. And I wanted to do it for a while, and I figured that seems like a good mark. Now, I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about, but think this should be fun, or a fun experiment. So I'm going to have a little chat, and I'm going to carry it into Christmas itself, which is very fitting. It's a very magical time. And we just had a couple of very long days. Had to move from one state to another, so it's a little exhausting. So we're a little delirious. But this should be fun. So we'll see what comes out of it. Might be a complete flop, might be something, who knows, right? So I'm Danny, this is Kelsey. And what do we want to talk about? I have no idea. Do you have any suggestions, babe?
I thought you were asking the camera. I'm like, you know you're not live, right?
I'm talking to you.
I know, now.
What do you mean I'm not live? We're filming.
Do you have any ideas, guys?
I'm looking at you into the camera.
Oh, I wasn't looking.
Oh, I didn't realize you were going to be a dick about it. Okay, whatever.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's my sidekick in that she kicks me in the side all the time. It's perfect.
What should we talk about?
I don't know. We can warm up with whatever.
We should talk
Look,
about...
the tree of the connection of life. That's what we got. That's what I got her for Christmas. Because we're disgusting and we're connected from past lives and shit like that. So those are the stones that connect people from past lives. Or so the sticker said. So I'm assuming that's true. Why would they lie about that? Pretty sure you can sue multi-dimensionally. The mic, baby. You gotta be careful around the mic.
I have no mic awareness.
Oh, yeah. She has no headphones. Or,
Just rip my hair out.
that's what I do. Or mic awareness. Yeah, this is just going to be like this the whole time, so you guys can puke. It's so fucking amazing.
What? I wasn't even looking at the camera. I would gag.
Oh, yeah, there you go. So maybe, is that the video we're doing? You gagging? This is PG-13.
PG-13? What do you want your 13?
That was just like, yeah, it's very... So, yeah. But clearly we're very, very experienced by doing this like that. Come on with the subject. Something, come on. Look alive.
Why am I the guy?
You're not the guy.
I'm thinking, like the guy who comes up with...
Well, we're looking just yeah, you know.
What about... Okay, you're talking about trees.
Trees, yeah.
It seems to be that things that arise just make they're coming from a tree formation. Like as you get more.
You mean things in general?
Yeah, things in general.
Wow, you went deep real fast. Okay, I like that. So
Like even like those hypergraphs and.
wait. So you gotta like, people are not in like conversations we're having. So we have to like.
No, but you're wondering what direction I'm talking about.
So what hypergraphs?
You would be the guy to explain what a hypergraph.
But if you bring up a subject, you should consider there's an audience of nobody right now. but you should take that nobody seriously.
But you're gonna give a better explanation.
But sure, but but don't just pitch me things to talk about. I actually want to have a genuine conversation. Come on.
You asked me what.
Okay, but fine. So you want to talk about hypergraphs? What are we saying about
not
hypergraphs?
Specifically hypergraphs, but
Okay.
how that seems to be the formation of how life organizes itself.
So you're saying that you want to talk about, but why did you? Oh, so you just kind of segued from the tree to things arising.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so what are we saying about things that arise? Hello, Simba. Say hello to Simba. This is my friend Vika's cat. It's beautiful. It's saying hello. Klishmish. go do things. Uppa.
Bye.
Poor Mike. Shit, it's like.
Michael.
So what are we specifically talking about? Things that arise, like what's the?
So I was talking about how it seems interesting that.
Now, given we only have one mic, so I mean, you wanna at least raise your voice a little bit. Come on, make an effort.
Okay.
You got this.
I will punch you.
Okay, good. It's gonna be about punching. We can go until another 10 minutes, but come on.
Like how seems to be the case that like no matter what discipline or type of specific thing you're talking about arising, whether it be like more specific information patterns or more biodiverse organisms or just smaller branches of a tree that like make fruit, maybe it seems to arise from like that node property, like from one thing or
So simple rules that extrapolate into
yeah.
something a little more complex. Okay.
And even also when we were studying machine learning,
Mm-hmm.
that's how they that's how they come up with their rules that the machine learns by and improves with.
So simple rules that somehow extrapolate to complicated systems, and that seems to be at the core of what nature does, not necessarily in the core of whatever humans build, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think a lot of things that humans build just emulate what nature does,
Right.
which speaks to your property.
But I guess a lot of people confuse that with, like, we have this assumption that only things that humans make have, like, and plan, have the capability of, like, developing into more complex systems, versus it seems that everything in nature, if you take simple rules, like for example in the Game of Life with the little squares, if you don't know about it, look it up, Game of Life. Conway, I believe, was a mathematician that came up with that game, and he resented it his whole life because he was known for that, but really he did a lot of other things that he wanted to be known for. I actually think the Corona claimed him, which is very sad.
Really?
But yeah, but
his first name was Stephen, right?
I don't remember what his first name was, but Conway for sure. It might be Stephen Conway. I don't remember. Look it up. But Game of Life. So essentially, it's a very simple mathematical experiment in which if you set up basic conditions for squares on a grid. I don't remember the exact rules, but there's like 3 or 4 of them, and like something along the lines of if one has 3 neighbors, then one dies from overpopulation. If one has one friend that it lives, 2 friends, then it creates another friend. 2 friends, it survives. I don't exactly remember. I think 1 friend, it becomes alive, something. So there's like 3 or 4 basic rules that you can very easily look it up. Clearly, I didn't prepare for this. And what's interesting is that if you run those simulations, it creates those very intricate, well, some initial conditions create those very intricate worlds in which things interact and grow and move and shoot things. It's really strange. And if you look into Stephen Wolfram's work, so I guess it's the world of Stevens, there's his latest hypergraph theory that seems to be gaining more and more momentum, that deals with computational models that are created also from basic fundamental rules. And then he found one rule or a set of rules that creates, essentially, if you run it forward, you not only hit a universe, but everything that we can see, even in very deep mathematical theory. So Einstein's field equations come up, string theory comes up, and it just kind of arises from those models. So it seems that he's at least somewhere on the money. And I guess what's interesting, because we spoke about this ad nauseum, but I guess what's interesting to me about all that is that how those simple rules somehow are in the core of nature and not something that we have to set up as initial conditions. So it's almost like even the most intricate things we do seem to eventually point to, well, it only kind of speaks to us. We're the bridge by which it's being manifested into the world or instantiated in the world. But really, it's those simple conditions and rules that are the ones that actually give rise to all this intricacy. Do you have I guess that is super interesting, but do you have any real point about it? Or this is something you just wanted to you wanted to get the ball rolling about it, which is fine.
No, I was just you were like, what should we talk about? And that was my first idea, and then...
Thanks for bringing us way back. That was good times. I remember it was like when we just started the podcast, remember? It was wow.
So much happened.
So much water under the bridge. It's been 15 minutes.
I know. Times
what is the what?
What is Wolfram's it's not moving us into anywhere, but I don't know.
We're not necessarily trying to move anywhere. Yeah.
What is Wolfram's area? Is he a quantum physicist or
he's a physicist? Well, no, he was also in technology a big chunk of his life. He's all-around scientist, and he's a code. He's also he's a code.
Scientist?
Well, computer scientist is a code writer, so he's he builds code. So,
gotcha. So he's
but it's
in a lot of different.
And one of the more interesting insights, I guess, that he had, which I heard him speak about, at least to me, the one that really stood out, is that the way that he sees it at the moment is we're about to enter another revolution, and people have been throwing that word around a lot. Things are changing. Things are people that speak the astrological language clearly talk about that, but then again, when are we not entering some age, right? But to make it simple, very clearly something is happening. I don't know what it is. Something very big and interesting is kind of unfolding, and we can all sense it to some extent. Wolfram's take, not on that in particular, but I guess it fits the times, but the thing that he outlines is that we're entering a stage in which we start to understand that if we really want to understand the world, the real laws of nature, he equates it to the time in which we realize that certain things cannot be expressed without mathematics, for example. So back in the day, you could express things in natural philosophy, and you could just talk about things logically, which would be in the language that you spoke at the time. And at a certain... What?
What are you referring to?
Oh, just before mathematics. People...
before math existed, you mean?
Yeah, or before calculus existed, certain mathematical tools, right? So it was not clear that not everything can be expressed with language, right? Mm-hmm. So in the same sense, when calculus was invented, algebra and other mathematical tools, we realized that, we slowly started to realize that certain things cannot be expressed in any other form but through mathematics. And that's because there's certain intricacies of functionalities of the world that can only be expressed, the deeper meaning of what they really mean, those interactions, can only be expressed and revealed to somebody who speaks the language of mathematics. Yeah. So what Wolfram is saying is that now we're entering a similar stage in which we're about to realize that in order to really understand the world, we actually going to have to start understanding the computational language. Yeah. And not just knowing how to code something, but to really understand on a deep level what computation is, just like, when you dive into the world of mathematics, you slowly start realizing what math is, and it's an infinite discovery journey.
And so computation being taking in information and processing it?
So that's the thing. So that's a really good question. computation is that's what I mean by, and I'm sure, or to the degree that I understand him to say, I think that's what he means, is that you really have to start diving deeper and deeper, and you're going to start understanding what computation really is. Just like with everything else that is complicated, you can't just
So you're saying
slap
there's
a
no,
sticker.
like, definition that would
There is a definition, and I'm sure there's one in the
not
dictionary.
that would embody exactly what you mean.
The real deeper, I guess, if I would have to, instead of dancing around it, if I would have to encapsulate that in a few sentences, is Simba is exploring the world right now. There's a very fascinating bag that he discovered that he needs to.
He's folding it.
He's folding it. He's a very organized cat. So he's literally folding it. It's really hilarious. There's nothing like a cat that decided to tidy up at
Fold
midnight.
the bag mid impromptu podcast at midnight.
There you go. It's like this corner of the world seems to be unorganized.
Oh,
and now I'm gonna bite it.
Carrying the bag. Okay,
Yeah.
where are you bringing the bag? Okay.
Whatever. So, anyways, if I would have to encapsulate what I think he means by what we're going to have to understand, we're going to have to speak the language of computation to understand the world, is that the world might be computational.
Okay.
So it might actually, but that's not, so either you understand this, which is possible. I'm not saying it's like in a negative vein. It's possible that you understand something very deeply and intrinsically that makes you just gloss over this and just go, okay.
No, I'm not glossing over. I'm just going to track back.
Okay.
Because I thought you were going to define what you mean by computation.
Yes.
Okay.
So, but this is part of it, I guess. So what I'm saying is that the reason that we might need to understand things computationally is because the world might be computational, and therefore you will never reach even close to truly understand it unless you kind of embody the understanding of what computation is. And it's just like, even though I can tell you that it just has to make noise. If I can tell you that, like, well, what is mathematics? Well, it's a language to describe relationships between things in the world in a more and more accurate way. But really, if you go deep into mathematics, then you start realizing, oh wait, this is so much more. There's there's certain nuances you simply can only truly understand is when you start grasping the concept from a functional perspective. Mm-hmm. So I think the computation, if the world is computational, and this was part of my answer, I guess, there's a lot that it means about the world. It's not just to say, well, it's computational. Well, what does that mean? Well, one thing it means is that the property of computing things is intrinsic in the fabric of reality itself. Now, that's not a given.
So what I'm asking is even more basic than that. I'm saying, when you say the word computation,
mm-hmm.
do you mean taking in
transfer of information
and processing?
Storing of information, processing information? We can look up, I guess, the...
No, I don't need a dictionary definition.
Yeah, so...
What you refer to...
When I refer to... for me, computation... So I don't know if that's what Wolfram means by that, but for me, computation is essentially the process by which information transforms, moves, interacts, and influences things in the world.
Okay.
In all forms, in all shapes. Which seems to be that information is fundamental, but, this is absolutely an open debate. Mm-hmm. And I think that I think that there's a lot of doors that open to very deep understandings also about ourselves as creatures in this world and what it means to be conscious, because it's a form of computation. But then when we look at it through that lens, we start realizing, wait a second, so if this is actually fundamental, that means that consciousness is fundamental, but it's not fundamental in the same way that people that think that consciousness just arises from arises from the fabric of space. It's not quite the same way, right? So because we're getting specific. We're getting specific as to what is the exact mechanism by which computation gives rise to consciousness and things like that. and then it opens up the window to talk about our place in the world and what the world is. And okay, so let me just bring it back a little bit, because it's not the reason that it stood out to me, that is the thing that stands out to Wolfram, because first of all, there's not a lot of thoughts or ideas that when you hear them, it really kind of makes you pause and like, wait, I really never thought about that. That's interesting, because what it means is that in order to truly perceive a section of the world, you have to be able to not only speak but embody a certain language. And I think a good analogy to that is when you go to a new country and you're trying to learn a new language. Let's say you go to France or Italy or somewhere, right? And then you decide to stay for a few months and you want to learn the language that way, which is the best way to learn. Why? Because you immerse yourself in not just the spoken word, but in the mannerisms, in the culture, in the way that people do things, which is an integral part of the language itself. You do not.
You're getting the different. You're getting contextual teaching as well.
Exactly, and you do not speak the language if you just know how to say things. You start truly speaking the language when you start embodying the behavior that the language evokes in a person. And that means, and by the way, you would start seeing certain cultural norms. Like, let's say you walk into a room and there's a certain faux pas you were a part of, or whatever it is that happened that kind of people looked at you funny and you didn't realize why. A month goes by and then you start speaking the language a little deeper and understanding some of the nuances of behavior, and all of a sudden you look back and you say, oh, wait a second, that was crazy. Like, I looked like a fool. Well, you couldn't see that part of the world. You couldn't see that part of interaction in that moment because you did not speak a certain section of the language. You did not embody that. And that's true across the board. And if that's true, then, and Wolfram is on the money, that means that we all need to truly understand and do some computation to a certain degree so we can start understanding or seeing certain sections of the world. Imagine that there's literally interactions right in front of you. I don't want to get like too airy-fairy, but there's certain interactions of the world with itself and with you that you simply are completely blind to because you don't speak, you don't embody a certain section of the language that the world requires you to speak in order for you to see those nuances. Yeah. That's why that part really stands out to me.
I think there's a little bit of that, learning how to speak that section of the language, or learning how to immerse yourself into it, or understand it truly. But then I guess a prerequisite of understanding it truly is something that we're not so great at, which is, or great at in teaching right now, or great at in teaching right now, or placing importance on, is learning things in a general capacity. So like generalizing skills to like different areas of study. Like, I think we talk about this a lot. It's like study of botany isn't isolated to botany. Whatever you learn there is also applied to everything, because what formed those structures, or what systems you're learning about, doesn't just exist in isolation. It's like physical properties, the way it interacts with other things, at the root probably math, right? And the way that we teach or like tend to think about things is like by putting them in boxes in isolation. And probably why Wolfram is so on the money is that he's a generalist in science, and kind of has his hands in different parts of understanding.
So you're saying that in order to see certain sections of reality, we have to have somebody to lead the way, somebody who's a real...
Not even somebody to lead the way, just I think we need to change the way that we think about things in general, or learn about them, learn about different concepts, because you can't see like you losing the forest for the tree. You're like looking and so zoomed in, a window that you can't see how things relate, and like relation creates meaning for things.
So do you think we should go about start doing that? Because I guess the reason that it is that way is because
so that people can make actual progress and specialize in
specialized, but and also it feels like it's basically like an attention span problem.
Yeah.
There's so much you can
There's
pay
so
attention
much you
to
can pay
on a certain level.
And there's so much you can actually make headway on, as far, like, for example, like my, I used to work in the lab, and a genetics lab, and the things that you study are so specific as to almost not matter, but you have to pick a thing that's actually testable to make any headway, or like actual discoveries, and not just be essentially like a philosopher.
So somebody that can see, somebody can see that you made progress. Okay.
No, to actually make progress. So if you just say like, I want to figure out how I'm using plants because that's my like research background, but I want to see how to make this plant hardier in like rough winters or something. You're not going to be able to figure that out by just like looking at all the plants and like positing what it could be. You have to like break it down and look at the genome and say like, I think this gene might have something to do with it. Let's knock it out and then test it and like do a bunch of.
So doesn't that fly in the face of what you said a second ago?
So that's what I'm saying, is that that's so specific as to almost not matter, but it's like necessary to make the actual discovery. But I'm saying that seems to be the way that we teach everything. I think there needs to be a mixture. Like, so there do need to be specialists, right? But it seems like even like in the general educational system, we separate the disciplines and don't even talk about how they relate to each other, so you can start making connections. So like, yes, there is a reason why you do research that way, to make headway, but then what does that mean? What does it transfer to? How can we connect it? How can we like have interdisciplinary discussions more? So
you're saying
matters.
Open up the way that education is done to some degree of open source exploration, even if you specialize in something, and just basically inculcate that in the way that curriculum is being structured in schools from the get-go.
And I bring up academia because that's mainly where our newer discoveries come from. It's all of our research is, our geniuses are based in academia, right? But
you think so?
Well, no, like not all the smart people, but I'm saying like all of the discoveries that come out of the world right now are like,
it's the only places where it's available, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Like the tools are there.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why I bring up academia, not necessarily talk about the educational system specifically, but
what I mean, I guess, let me clarify. So I guess I'm asking, do you think that we should change? I mean, people in academia came through steps of education, right? Mm-hmm. So what I mean by education is, I mean across the board. So essentially, like, also, so even before you go to grad school, you're saying there should be like already hints of thinking like that, and especially when you go to grad school, even though you're going through this like much more tedious and specific path, you should still have this kind of not just open-minded attitude, but also open-minded tools, so to speak, that we should develop, that maybe will incorporate the new open sources that we have and the way that they're integrated. But isn't that already happening?
So, yes, but what I'm saying is that the people who are in charge or the general push, I think, should be, why does it matter? And how do we make connections to have those conversations? Because to me, it seems like the way that things have to be segmented to make discoveries have like, it's just like spilled over into this like hyper categorization almost, to where like everyone has their specific vocabulary, again, which is necessary to like know exactly what you're talking about in that realm. But
So from all the trees, we can't see a forest?
Yeah, so you use that in your literature, and then now you can't talk to, like, now the plant cell biologist can't have a conversation with like the quantum physicist, because they're not talking the same language, but they're talking about the same fundamental ideas, and this one might make a discovery that matters here.
So you're saying that it's almost like they become different species of knowledge.
Yeah.
That they can't mate with each other anymore.
And they also classify themselves as that and teach it to the new minds coming up. So they're also not teaching how to...
So scientists should mate more, is
generalize.
With each other. They should intermingle.
They should intermingle. Yeah. But it's the same issue.
It's all about sex.
Yeah. Great reading between the lines. It's the same issue that you're saying with language and immersive experiences. It's that if you sit in a classroom and you talk about, like, here is the vocabulary for being at dinner, and here is the vocabulary for being in a shop or whatever, right? You're not seeing all the contextual uses of maybe that sentence or that word or that sentence structure in different contexts. And so you can't really make a meaning. You can't really see the whole picture of how it matters.
So you're saying that the actual... Okay, I see what you're saying. So that those are all essentially the problems. How do we move from that? Do you have any ideas of like how we can potentially move away from that? Less jargon, more generalized language?
I think posing actual problem, like actual like real life, it kind of speaks to how Elon teaches kids, or his like rule about like teaching kids new things is just give them a problem and the tools, and don't tell them how to use the tool, like show them why you need it. I think that is a big thing. So
from a real world problems engineering kind of
being shown like real applications for a thing, and not necessarily coming at it with brand specific already existing uses, like this is how you will use this knowledge, but by saying this is a thing that matters / this is an issue that we can solve, and what are the things that we can use to get there, because then you're going to look into like this facet and it connects to a different discipline, and like that discipline has a key that like yours doesn't, and just it's just a wholesome issue, because again, nothing exists in isolation, so you can't just use the specific jargon and knowledge that you have.
That's a really good point. So I think you're right. I think there's got to be a commitment from institutions to slowly change that kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. It needs to be top down for sure.
So do you think? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Not really. It wasn't super important. Continue.
Well, no, please.
No. But you're going.
Oh, well, I guess I'm saying is that's a really good point. I think that real world applications of things and looking at problems and knowledge in general around real things in the world and real applications in the world is key to speak the more general language of functionality. And I think that even in domains like theoretical mathematics and theoretical physics, we're starting to see a world, and well, maybe not in theoretical mathematics, because that's, that goes pretty far. But at least in theoretical physics, we see more and more there's certain things that start meeting applications. So like things that before were completely theoretical, all of a sudden now they start to flirt with real, actual production of things. Like quantum computers is one example, but there are many others. And I think that ultimately, this is kind of brings us back full circle to whether or not the world is computation. I think that whatever the human mind comes up with, ultimately, maybe in a very far future, who knows, but ultimately we're going to have to face and deal with the question, okay, but where did that come from?
Does it already exist and we're just...
Either it exists or is conjured from something in nature, makes no difference to the point that means that it is a part of the world in some form,
so
which means...
I think everything is just the specific connections that are made, and that kind of, again, brings us full circle to that node idea that we were saying. So if you're saying that information already exists, and for example, things that humans figure out, humans are just wired in a way that they can make those certain connections, or like draw this line to this line when the points already exist, but you're just making that connection. That in the same way that we take raw materials and build like a rocket ship, like, I guess that's computation, but the connections that you're making,
knowledge, I guess. This is David Deutsch's definition of knowledge, which is it's information that can do work.
Yes.
Either construct something or make something do something.
But through specific connections. So like...
But no, it has to be specific. Mm-hmm. The more accurate the knowledge, the more specific it is, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. But like, as far as the information already existing, I think that's totally the case.
Yeah. I think this is kind of a nice extra full circle for Christmas time, that the primary thing seems to be interactions, relationships between things. Because, if there's one object in the void by itself, even if it's conscious, it has nothing to bump against, so to speak, or to interact with, or to understand, or to see. And if we're talking about something more complex, then let's say a human all of a sudden appears in the middle of nowhere. It's not like there's nothing that it's like to be in relation to anything else, so it's pointless. But in that case, it's a little different because the human has certain attributes to which it can be relating to. But what?
Because this started with you talking about Joe Rogan, have you seen the one where...
Hey Joe, thanks for watching. Thanks for being our only...
Where he's talking about... I guess it's like Trump's son's girlfriend. She's like making a speech, but it's during the pandemic, and so there's nobody in the room, so she's just yelling like this slogan into an empty room. And there's this meme about like a beaver screaming on a mountain, and he just goes, "Ah!"
So nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Did the beaver even scream on the mountain?
No. And then a tree fell and completely squished it. Oh. And then it made a sound of a squish. I think that this is a great way to end this little experiment, because we are exhausted. But I think it not even in just a poetic way, but this is true. This is relationships, interactions between things are the main thing. They're the only thing that causes anything to happen. And that's true from atoms all the way to human beings. Mm-hmm. And notice that we always say, like, we're a social animal. There's not one thing in the universe that is not a social animal. Yeah. Nothing exists by itself, by definition, and really, what the universe, the multiverse, whatever it is, it's a collection of interactions. The things by themselves don't mean anything until they bump into something else, and then the interactions between those two things defines a thing that happened, or a thing that advanced, or something that will cause another thing to happen. And I think keeping that in mind is really helpful, at least for me, to realize that in the times that for us in our human world, things seem to be chaotic and crazy like it was in this insane year that is about to pass. The one thing that remains always constant is that how we relate to whatever is happening, or to other people, or to ourselves in that situation, is the only thing that determines what happens next. And I think, to me, that's a great takeaway from any situation. Not that it's that easy to implement all the time, but I think that's a great thing to carry with you, because it allows for certain things to be in perspective, and not overblow certain things out of perspective. I think that knowing what things mean to you and why is an important practice in general, but especially when things become a little hard. I don't know when this became like a lesson learned kind of podcast. I don't know why I assumed that role, but I guess it just kind of came out. So I'll just go with that.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you have anything to add, babe?
No, I think everybody, well, hopefully everybody took something valuable away from our quarantine this year, the whole pandemic, is that a lot of things that we concern ourselves with or place at the highest level of importance actually doesn't cause things to move or matter as much as we think it does. And like our relationships with you're saying like the reactivity of our environment, but also the people around us, whether it be, you know, like a stranger or like our closest loved ones, like that's the thing that actually matters. Yeah, it's been a year, but I think there was like a purpose for it, a very intentional feeling.
Huh.
Like the world was like, hey guys.
Yeah, that's a really good thought. That this happened for us to realize some things about ourselves and our interactions, and we did. And I think we're ready to embark on a new, wonderful, amazing year. And I can't help but notice that it's about to become 42 minutes, which this podcast might run. I'm doing it very consciously at this point. I'm sorry. I don't control myself, but at exactly 42 minutes, for the obvious reasons, I have to hang up on you, or whatever this is called when podcast is over. So